Joining us now, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, a CIA former senior intelligence officer. He's a New York Times best-selling author. He's a guy who knows a lot about military stuff, and of course, we got a war, or maybe we don't have a war against ISIS. Good morning, Lieutenant Colonel Shaffer. Tony, how are you?
Hey, good to be on, Brian. Thanks for having me.
All right, let me run through some of this sound, and then I've got a question, so just bear with me. Here is the president describing what needs to be done with ISIS.
We will degrade and ultimately destroy ISIL through a comprehensive and sustained counterterrorism strategy.
That's the way he has said. A lot of people say, well, why doesn't he just come out and say we're at war? And there was a great deal of criticism about the president's sort of mealy-mouthed approach to this whole thing, refusing to use the W word. And here's Press Secretary Josh Earnest, who tried to come into the press office and the press briefing room and clean it all up.
So in the same way that the United States is at war with al-Qaeda and its affiliates around the globe, the United States is at war with ISIL.
All right, sort of a half measure. I mean, to some degree, we are at war, he seems to be saying. And then the Secretary of State was asked about it on the Sunday talk shows, and here's what he said.
We're engaged in a major counterterrorism operation, and it's going to be a long-term counterterrorism operation. I think war is the wrong terminology and analogy. I don't think people need to get into war fever on this.
So my question is, what is going on? Are we at war or not?
Brian, what you're seeing is the actual visible results of the complete chaos inside the administration. I was interacting with one of the senior Pentagon officials currently in the Pentagon over the weekend, and I can't get into specific details, but let me put it this way: it's far worse than people are being led to believe. There are huge problems between the intelligence community on what is what. Defense side is much more concerned than CIA is. And what you're seeing is obviously this legal battle also going on. You saw the president now is saying he wants to use the authorized use of military force, AUMF, that he was actually, I think, wanting to veto or call for the recall of last year. The AUMF, Brian, is what you may recall, is what President Bush used to go to war to go after al-Qaeda. So President Obama was wanting to get rid of it. Now he wants to use it. So what you see is this is just kind of we're seeing the visible. This is the old saying about the iceberg. We're seeing the tip of the iceberg, and what you're seeing now is this total breakdown of what to do, how to do it, and how to go about doing it. Let me say one thing real quick. What the president put out the other night was not a strategy. As much as he says it's a strategy, it is not a strategy. He put out a few tactics which should be tied to a larger campaign plan, which is then tied to a strategy. And I've talked to General Tony Zinni about this and some others. He's been in the media about this. Brian, simply put, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're trying to achieve. And we just don't know what's going to happen over the next 2 weeks, even though we are technically at war with ISIS. All
right. So, but when you're unwilling to say it, and it doesn't suggest that perhaps your heart is not in this, that you're doing everything you can to sort of, create a half measure in this approach. We're going to manage it. We're not going to actually get into a war.
Yeah, degrading is not a strategy. Sun Tzu once said, tactics before a strategy is the noise before defeat. And that's what's going on here. And this is, again, it's how we got here. President Obama knew. He was warned when he left Iraq. His commander said, if you leave, you're going to see problems. A year ago, Brian, people started warning him that the veneer was coming off the really nice democracy that he'd left behind. And yet he did nothing. And now, we're looking at the complete failure of the state, the issue regarding what's going to happen in Syria is still up in the air, and it's because of a lack of leadership, it's a lack of will. Trust me, Brian, there's no lack of good advice coming to the president from the Pentagon and from those who know what's going on. This chaos is a choice, and the choice is not helping it's concerning our allies. And I'd like to believe the American people are waking up to the lack of ability of this president to lead us to do anything.
So our guest is Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, and your book, Dark Heart, Spycraft and Special Operations on the Front Lines of Afghanistan and the Path to Victory, suggests, first of all, that in the opening years of our campaign in Afghanistan, we did see victory.
Right.
And so the question here is, how do we get to victory against ISIS, and has the president laid out any kind of plan or tactics? I mean, he has said, he's vowed, airstrikes, yes, but no boots on the ground. John Kerry just did a whole parade through the Middle East trying to rally the neighboring nations to put their sandals on the ground, and they said, no way, we're not going down there either. So how do we win?
There's no confidence right now. Yeah, we were able to win in Afghanistan in 42 days, and I've argued that we could do the same thing again with the right approach, with the right people. Yes, it's going to require boots on the ground, but not the the deployment of an entire division. We're talking about essentially special operations forces shepherding other forces through. And let me be clear for your audience here, Larry. This whole idea of quote unquote training Syrian militia and all these quote unquote moderate Islamic rebels. It's totally insane. We saw that in Afghanistan, where we had funded the Haqqani network against the Soviets during the Cold War, and they came back to really cause problems for us, kill Americans later. So we've got to be very careful how we proceed here. The president's heart is not in it. He's been drugged kicking and screaming to where he's at now, and the result is we have allies who distrust our interests, and ISIS, who with the beheading of the British aid worker over the weekend, clearly are not being affected one iota by what the president said last week.
And so I just want to circle back on something here, because you just said that we could have victory in Syria, Iraq, if we deployed special forces. You know your stuff. You were there. You were CIA trained in these things. What do you think it would take right now, and how quickly do you think we could see victory?
Well, it would take a concerted effort of logistics and air support lined up over a 30-day campaign. You'd have to bring the Kurds in. Plus, Larry, this has not been well reported. There's Assyrians, there's Christians, there's Yazidis, who all basically, I've talked to these folks in the Hill, they don't want to be moved out of the areas they've lived there for the last 10,000 years. They want to be armed. They want to defend their villages. So this is different than arming Syrian rebels. This is arming people who live there and want to go back home. So we need to work with them, the Kurds, and with them and probably the Egyptians and the Jordanians, we could probably put together a very credible military force to push ISIS completely out of Iraq. Look at how we can settle some of the things within Syria within 30 days. Within 60 days, you would have essentially an effective combat force securing the terrain you want. And that's where the difficult piece comes in, is trying to settle the peace. But it can be done. It could be done. It's a choice to not do it at this point in time.
Very, very quickly, there was another beheading over the weekend, this time a British citizen. Does that bring Britain into the thing? Do the Brits get involved now?
Well, Brian, they've always kind of been there. They're just not they're in force as much as we are. They were actually on the raid that attempted to rescue Foley. I think they're going to be putting a lot more skin in the game now, and obviously because a lot of folks believe that a lot of these radicals, to include the so-called fifth Beatle, the Beatle guy there who beheaded these guys, is probably British from one of the radicalized mosques in London. So they do have skin in the game. I see them stepping up to do more.
Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, thank you so much.
Sure.